There is something that happens when your soul realizes that it is at the edge of a breakthrough. The moment when deep down you already know what your next step is, and you know the kind of change that will come with taking that step is huge, but you just have to find the courage to take it. Neuroscientists say that our brain works its hardest to protect us from all kinds of hurt. And a huge example of how that protection works is what we call procrastination. All the ways that we let ourselves avoid what we perceive as potentially harmful, things like failure or the fear of being seen. And like most coping mechanisms, procrastination is helpful in terms of emotional regulation until it's not. And this is not a new phenomenon. Philosophers have also been asking these questions for years. Socrates asks how it is possible that if one judges an action to be the best, one would still do anything other than this action. And I've been asking myself that question too a lot. It's just been coming up more and more for me, because when you realize that your days are stale and you feel stuck because you're consistently not doing what you know to be the next best action, despite what good or what legitimate excuse you have, you still know that deep down something has to change. And when you are a creative that is not creating, it can feel like a death inside of you. And you feel drained all the time. You feel like you're withering away because you're spending all your energy trying to live a life that feels really hard. And it is a type of hard that lets you know that the life that you're living is not one that you're suited for. The common conclusion across different forms of research is that people prone to procrastination are overall less compassionate toward themselves. And that right there is the insight that has helped me the most. That in ignoring my immediate need for self-expression, I'm actually being unkind to myself. So in many ways, I am grateful to my brain for all the ways that it works to protect me. But what happens when it is time to take a different approach or to learn a new way of being? What happens when what I need to be protected from is myself? And I say that without an ounce of condemnation and with all the compassion that I deserve and that I believe that you deserve too. I think it is up to you to decide what kind of push you need at every moment in time. I am always on the side of gently starting over or gently picking up from where I left off on my path and focusing on the very next steps on my journey. There's a quote by Brianna Wiest that says, "Your life will be a series of inhales and exhales." And I love that so much because becoming yourself is a series of building and unbuilding, of trying, failing, showing up, and knowing when to turn away. So I slowly started to remind myself again that there is no shame in failing. There is no shame in starting over. There is no shame in having people see you try and fail. And that what matters more is how you respond to these moments in your life and how you adapt to who you are recognizing yourself to be, and how brave it is to continuously take steps towards becoming your truest self. I've begun to ask myself, what exactly is it are you trying to avoid? What exactly are you afraid of? What's the worst that could happen? What's the best that could happen? And I'm trying to answer those questions as honest as I can. I've stopped lying to myself. I absolutely do not work well under pressure. And even if I am capable of working under pressure, I deserve better than to work in that kind of environment. The truth is, you cannot outrun yourself. No matter how long you avoid whatever it is that you're avoiding, what you find when you're escaping yourself is the same thing that you were running away from at the end of the day. Because you can only distract yourself for so long. And to get yourself going again, you have to start showing up for yourself in the mundane, everyday things first. You have to let the little things be the big things. You have to be okay with the small things, feeling like the big things. You have to give yourself the chance to grow into what you are. You are tired and you are hiding because the gap between where you are and where you see yourself going is huge. And it's taking some time to get to where you want to get to, but it's supposed to take time. The best things often do. Nobody is inspired or motivated all the time. And whatever work you're trying to do, you got into it because you see the greatness in it. You see the joy in it. But most things aren't great the first time around. That's why we have drafts. And our work sucks sometimes, especially when we're comparing it to the potential of what they could be or what we had in mind before we started creating. And sometimes they're great, but they just don't get any attention or they don't get acclaim the way we think it deserves to. And it hurts and it's disappointing and entirely human. Anyone who's done anything worth doing knows that feeling. We all go through it. So if you're starting out or you're in this phase right now, the best thing you can do is keep showing up. The thing that closes the gap between where you are and where you want to be is the time you show up and the work that you do. It's taken me too long to learn this. But yes, the truth is it's supposed to take a while. It's supposed to take time. And you can protect yourself in many ways from many things. But you can't protect yourself from the process. You can't protect yourself from time. You deserve to take as much time as it'll take to get to where you are. The joy of it is not actually the destination. It's the process. And that's where you find yourself. That's where you actually find what you're doing it for. I have such a love-hate relationship with the process of braiding my hair because as much as I love doing it and I love the end result, it just takes so long. Mostly because I'm allergic to doing smaller braids. Like I could do bigger braids and, which would take less time, but I don't know, I just always feel like it makes my hair feel bulky over time. It's not really my style, so I opt out for smaller, than the average braid style, which just ends up taking a really long time to do. And then there's also the prices, if you live in the West and the astronomical prices of getting your hair braided. It's a crime. It's a crime. You shouldn't be spending like $400, $500. If you're a regular person in this economy on your hair, that is ridiculous.
Trying to figure you out, I just wanna make you smile. Hold your hand in my hand, looking at the sunset. Man, you're looking good tonight. I wanna kiss you before the sun goes down. It's what you're doing, making me feel like I'm falling. And when you're moving, I can hear my calling.
It is my first time doing this particular style, and I'm now realizing that I underestimated exactly how tedious it is, but I've come too far to turn back now. That sounds like a motivational statement, but yeah, I've come too far to stop now or to change styles. I'm just going to stick to it, and because I've got work tomorrow, what is going to happen is I'm going to go as far as I can tonight. Hopefully, I can finish like the top, and if I do that, I think I will stop and prep for the week. It is a Sunday. Today's a Sunday. I'll prep for the week and finish it up tomorrow because I don't want to. I'm not really. I'm not going to not sleep because I'm getting my hair done. That is not really my style anymore. So I'm going to go as far as I can go today, and I will finish this in a couple of years. Wish me luck. I'm going to need it. my coworkers and I try to organize a day, well, not me, people on my team try to organize a day where we meet in person and work because we're mostly remote workers. On my own, I try to work from like cafes and the library on some days just so I can get out of the house. But those days I'm usually not dressed up, like I look presentable. But it's been a while since I've gotten up as early as I did today and actually like had to get ready. I'm an early riser, but usually when I wake up, it's not to get ready immediately to go to work. It's a very foreign feeling to my body, but then I enjoy the prep. And I get to show you my hair. And now more than ever, I'm actually grateful that I did this hairstyle because I was concerned that spring was going to be really warm because they're anticipating a really hot summer this year. So I thought it was going to be really hot and I was going to feel gotta smell good, you know? Love to smell good. I have such like efficient planning, but at the same time, like maybe it's poor execution because I wake up early every time. I have more than enough time to get ready, but somehow I still end up like being down to the wire. There's no reason, absolutely no reason why I should be rushing right now because I woke up early. I planned my morning properly, but here I am still. It is the story of my life. I have to figure out a way to not have that be the case. Ugh. Going to take some of the things and I'm gonna have to redo this bun. I'm rushing. Hello. Good morning.
You look amazing.
So do you. Oh, you went with this. Better. Of the work from home thing. Most people like taking their morning.
That's literally the worst. Is that one of them? Are you serious? That's so nice.
Right after you called me. And he was like, oh, I love your hoodie. I was like, you don't. For today, we have yes, because yesterday when you asked me, I didn't think about it. When you were like, oh, so I gotta get the like, no, he's terrible. Clearly she was terrible. But they made it for yeah. I look like my mom today. Oh, yeah, I actually forgot about that.
Come a little closer. I wanna dance with you. Everything's moving slower. I don't know what it is you do. I've been looking at you all night, trying to figure you out. I just wanna make you smile. Hold your hand in my hand, looking at the sunset. Man, you're looking good tonight. I wanna kiss you before the sun goes down. It's what you can hear my calling. There's no one else here that is singing you. It's what you're doing.
What I always find funny is that as a creative, if you go through creative slumps or when you're coming out of the slump, you seem to gain a whole new understanding of the phrase, I will live my life even if it kills me. Because I started the year out feeling like depressed. I was actually physically ill for a while, but I did have this like bout of just, I didn't want to do anything. And I don't know if it's like, and I haven't sought any professional opinion, but I found that those periods usually for me coincide with when I stop creating. Like when I lock myself up, if I put myself in the jail of, like just not creating, I'm stuck inside my head, everything else just doesn't seem to flow as much. And as painful as it can be to sometimes work through the phases of being active and being creative, it is not as painful as not putting anything out. It is not as painful as locking up your own self-expression. You physically feel something die within you, and you feel it physically, you feel it mentally, emotionally, and until you are a little bit out of it, which I am. I'm mostly out of it. I feel fresh again. I feel energized. Not every day. Every day isn't bright, but I'm not in my head as much as I was, and it's very specific because it didn't have to do with not journaling or not exercising. It didn't have to do with those things. It had to do with stifling my own creativity and self-expression, and it ended up spilling out into all these different ways. But I say all this to say that quote, I think it's E.E. Cummings, I will live my life even if it kills me. It's so true. I think it's true for everyone, but it is especially true if you're creative, if you have a desire in you to do something and there's something you should be doing, you know it. You absolutely know there's something you should be doing, but you're not doing it. You will feel it. I really think that is what may have happened to some of the people that you witness in this life, and you just find that they're bitter and you wonder how this person can spread such bitterness in the world. And I think, on some level, this is how it starts, right? You keep yourself hidden and you shell away from your own self-expression and you hide yourself from others, but then you hide, yourself from yourself. You never really get to express yourself and all of that. And some people carry that into adulthood, and I wish that you wouldn't do that. I'm hoping that if you found this video and you've watched up to this point, then you were maybe meant to hear this on some level. But every time I'm coming out of a creative slump, that is usually what gets me out. That is usually what gets me going at first. And at the beginning of the month, or like halfway through March, when I started pulling myself out of my own self-pity, woe is me, I just, don't know what's happening, this may be mental and maybe physical. And I don't think that kind of introspection is necessarily bad. It's just, it is very important to know when you need to give yourself a talk. There are times when you need to give yourself what you need. You need to take a not harsher, but a firmer stance with yourself. That is also a form of caring for yourself. It's also a form of giving yourself what you need. Sometimes I think what you need in the moment is to be nurtured in a way that, you need rest. You give your body time to really rest, taking all the rest that it needs, if that's what it needs. But you don't want to stay too long in that phase. Stay too long in that phase, it starts becoming detrimental. The very thing that you use to care for yourself can end up being the tool that will keep you locked in place. And it's very important to spot it while it's happening and to know the difference between when you need to nurture yourself in a way that requires hand-holding and soft talking, and when you need to light a fire under your ass. And if you can't do it, I suggest, if you're, you don't have to be religious to do it, but if you have a higher power, something outside of yourself that you can tap into, you can ask for God or for the universe to send you that thing. If you don't have it, because sometimes you just don't feel it within yourself, but you can always ask for it to come from a source outside yourself. And even when it comes from a source outside yourself, it's very funny because you will find that it's the source in itself, whatever it is that's happening, it's only going to confirm something in you that you already know. I find that really funny in the way the world, source, the universe, the way God works. It's very, I hope you take care of yourself and that you don't stay in the trenches for too long. And now I feel like I've made it, not to the other side, but I've made it to the other side. and I'm moving again, and I feel lighter, but I also feel the weight of, I have some guilt and some shame of all the time that I think I wasted not doing anything. But that I'm working through. Guilt is not a very productive I don't know if it's an emotion or a feeling. For me, it's not a productive thing. Shame, I can usually identify what the shame is pointing at. But yeah, I have some of those feelings lingering, like, oh, you spent all this time doing nothing, and you could have reached a certain point if you hadn't wasted all the time doing something, which, yeah, of course. But I'm going to chuck that and just chuck that up to past lost time. Moving forward, I'm forging ahead. But there's also feelings of all the things that I now want to do. And so I'm balancing the way I'm feeling now and the mode that I'm in now, where I know everything that I want to do, but I'm only going to focus on the things that are happening right now and things that I can do right now. Right now, where I'm at in my mind, it won't be a good time to plan way too far ahead. I suspect that planning way too far ahead, I think, is what sent me into this overwhelm that ended up leading to my creative rut, and I just kind of shut down. And I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm not doing that anymore anytime soon. If I'm going to rest, I'm going to make time for it, which I will. And of course, when it comes to factors outside myself, I don't know if you can see the sun coming in. It is spring now, and when it's spring and it's sunny outside, I find myself outside a lot more. The sun gives me an excuse to go out. So those are also factors that play into those things. And I wish to God that I wasn't so dependent on external factors. But unfortunately, I'm a lot more reliant on things that are, I think, outside of my control. And I don't like that. I wish I were more, yeah. But it is almost the end of the month, and I have two main things on my list for this month that I want to do. One is I want to watch Challengers. It came out 2 days ago. And I also have a book that I want to finish. And on that note, I wanted to give you a list and tell you about some of the books that I read in the month of April, well, from March coming into April. And then I have to drop something off at the post office. But I'm also going to see my brother today. I haven't seen him in a long time. So it's a chill day. It's a very chill day. Let's talk books. Yesterday I was thinking about reading and how different habits have different levels of morality ascribed to them, and how those things actually can determine our self-perception and, in a way, the way others perceive us too. Because I spent a lot of time, January, February, and March, while I was procrastinating all the things that I wanted to do, reading. I read a lot during that period. And I was thinking this yesterday, that I'm pretty sure if what I was doing, if my main hobby wasn't reading, I think I would have kicked myself a lot sooner. But because in our society especially, and even just for us, so we consider reading to be overall a good thing. And I'm not saying it's bad. I would never be arguing against reading, but I was just thinking about how, because reading is seen as such a good thing, the fact that it is my major distraction makes it a lot more difficult to catch myself when I'm using it as a means of protecting myself, or when I'm using it as a coping mechanism, right? And I wonder if it didn't have such a high value and positive perception attached to it, if I would have been able to notice it sooner, that I was procrastinating and I was using it as a measuring. Because I'm sure if it was a hobby or a habit that was considered negative in society, someone would have flagged it sooner. And that's the shame of being discovered that you're actively procrastinating would have been I think would have kicked me, unfortunately, into drive a lot faster than realizing, I've read this amount of books this month. Seems like a good thing, but there's so much more that I could be doing. I have other things that I want to be doing. There are other things that I should be doing. And the only reason why I'm bringing it up is just I wanted to put that out there, because I just think that sometimes the good things that we use to care for ourselves and nurture ourselves can also end up becoming the things that hold us back. And just because it is a good thing doesn't mean you should let it, right? I remember reading one time on Tumblr about hermit crabs, and how hermit crabs, because they are born defenseless and without any sort of protective cover or protective mechanism, they develop the hard shell. That's why the hard shell is developed. And the more they grow, at some point, it becomes really uncomfortable for them to stay in that shell, right? So they have to break out of it, they have to shed it and then leave themselves exposed so that they can develop a bigger case. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering this. This is not National Geographical, so pardon me. But the point is, they have to shed the old stuff, but it doesn't mean the old stuff all of a sudden was bad. It wasn't bad. It was good for what it was supposed to do at the time when they needed it. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't think I am. But if you find it helpful, then yeah, find it helpful. Don't let the thing that you love, because you deserve to keep enjoying the things that you love without using them as a crutch, without using them as an excuse, without using them as the reason why you're choosing to not be courageous, right? Do the hard thing. Choose the hard thing. It's worth it. Clearly, I have a lot on my mind today, but we are going to talk books. Books, that's it. And then I'm going out. So for me, the first half of the year has been extremely good for reading. I've had such a fun time reading some really great books. And as I was picking up the books that I wanted to show to you for this video specifically, I remembered one that I can't show you because it was a library pick. I borrowed it from the library and I had to return it, but I just wanted to mention it before I forget. And it's a book called Longborn by Joe Baker. And it was so good. It was so fun. It is a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but it's not focused on the Bennets. It's focused on the servants in the house. And, a lot of like other non-regular Pride and Prejudice characters. It's a retelling from an entirely different point of view, and it was so well done. I read it in February. It was so good. It was very unexpected and surprisingly short. Like I started reading it, and by the end of the following day, I was like, I can't believe this is done already. It was so quick. It was so good, and I recommend it. I wish I had it to show you, but I will put a picture of it somewhere up here. Speaking of historical fiction, I love reading like historical fiction books. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to find one that isn't like misogynistic, that is actually empowering. But there are some authors that I trust to write stories that are set in times that are vastly different from ours, but where the characters are still the women there are strong and empowered and making their way through the world. One of those authors is an author called Beverly Jenkins. I recommend her always, specifically for anyone who's looking to read historical fiction where the main characters are Black, because she does it really well. She incorporates like all the historical stuff, but in ways where the themes are not ignored. There's no erasure of what was going on around that time, but it's still not trauma heavy where you feel, like really destabilized when you're reading. So if that's not the experience that you're going for, I think her books are a really good way to read historical fiction where you can still see yourself in them. But another author that I love is Joanna Shoup, and I read this series of hers. It's called Uptown Girls series. This was my third Joanna Shoup series, and I swear by her. I swear by everything that she writes. So far, I have never been disappointed, whether it's a standalone or it's a series, like books that are standalone, like series. But you know what I mean? Like books that don't have like parts. Yeah, is what I mean. But those were really, really good. Then there's this one. It's called First Lie Wins. And this book was such a trip. I read it kind of on a whim. I had read like back-to-back romance, and I wanted to pick something that was a little more thrilling, a little darker. And I'm like, you know what? This is, like it's a good book of the month option. So I picked it, and it was so gripping. Let me see if I can sell it to you. So you're following the main female character, and the first time you meet her, she is moving in with her boyfriend. You clearly see that this is a really, really good relationship. But then immediately you, the reader, you kind of figure out from like the first chapter, first encounter, that she's playing this guy. She is some kind of spy. So whoever he thinks she is, she's not that person. But you don't know if she's working for the good guys, she's working for the bad guys. You just know that she's playing a role, and she is acting the role of his girlfriend, which he doesn't know. And she's incorporating herself into his life. And then he takes her to a luncheon at some point in like the first quarter of the book. He takes her to a luncheon, and she meets somebody. And at the luncheon, she's introduced to someone who is dating a long distance friend of his, like of her boyfriend. And she's introduced to this lady, and this lady is using her identity, the identity she is hiding, like her actual like real self that she is currently not being. That identity is what that lady is using. And I don't want to say more after that, but it becomes like intriguing after that. After that, I was hooked, and I was like, oh, I have to see this book through to the end, and I didn't. I wasn't disappointed. It was such a fun read. It is the embodiment of I support women's rights, but I also support women's wrongs. I loved it. That was a fun read. Another book that was fun to read is this Say You Be Mine. It wasn't on my list. I hadn't even like heard anything about it. I still haven't heard anything about it, really. I picked it. It was pink, and I'm like, oh, this looks like it'll be fun. It's Desi romance, which I always love, and it is a fake engagement trope. They're pretending to be engaged to each other for reasons that you can guess what the typical reasons are. Like their parents want them to get married, blah, blah, blah. But they know that like they're both faking it, and they end up not faking it. It was pretty standard, but it seemed like really, really regular. But I love the author's take on what is a very like generic trope. I love how she told the story, even though I'm like, oh, I think I know what to expect going into this book, but I was still pleasantly surprised. I can't talk. And then there is a book that is one of my top 3 for the year. It is The Husbands. And this book is, I don't know if I love it more because it was so unexpected in how like the story unfolded, or if it's because like I'm just always excited, super excited every time an author does something new. Like when I'm reading the book and I'm like, oh, this is such an original story. The protagonist in the book, a lady called Lauren, comes home to this house that she had just gotten. She's only lived here for a while, and she comes home to her husband, who is, like asking her how her day was, blah, blah, blah. But she doesn't have a husband. She didn't have a husband when she left home that day. So she's coming home to a strange man. And while she's like trying to wrap her head around the fact that there's a stranger in her house, he goes up into the attic and a different man comes down. And he goes on and on like that. Like the attic starts sending her different men. And I can't say any more than that without spoiling the book. But it was a fun read. I really enjoyed reading it. This one, Bride by Ali Hazelwood, I really enjoyed reading it. I'm not a huge like fantasy or romantasy reader. It has to come highly, highly recommended. But this was a book club pick, and I enjoyed reading it. I gave it like a 3.5 star in my book club review. I think, yeah, it was a fun read. It's not some I liked it because it's not something that I would have chosen for myself. So I was pleasantly surprised. There was really nowhere to go but up for me. I am currently reading is Funny Story by Emily Henry. So far, so good. I'm only 2 chapters in. I still have 3 days left in the month. So I may finish it before the end of April if I don't get pulled into something else, or if I get overwhelmed by work and editing this video, putting all this together. I might finish it, but my guess is it's going to go into May. It's definitely going to go into May, but it's a Emily Henry book. There was really no world in which I wouldn't have read it. She's an author by author. For me, she has proven herself to me to be worth the money every time, every single time. I got a poetry book by Wendy Cope, and it's so good. There are 2 poems in it now that I love. One is The Orange, which is the self-title of the book in itself. It's The Orange. And the other poem that I've been reading lately is called Being Boring, and she's kind of sharing her thoughts on what it's like being the kind of person who doesn't have a super eventful life, where when people ask, what have you been up to, what's happening, you don't really have much to say that won't sound mundane, but she is expressing her gratitude for the fact that, she has mundane things to be appreciative of, to be grateful for, considering the fact that, like other people have much more dramatic lives that sometimes lend itself to the negative, not so much the positive. So she may not have gone partying, and she may not have been all around the city or, whatever, but she's very grateful for all the mundane and all the regular things. And as much as she would, be open to excitement in her life, she is perfectly fine to go on being boring, quote unquote. And it was just one of those like books and poems that found me at the right time, when I think I was looking for a lot of excitement in my life to give the time that I'm spending meaningful. But it was just such a great reminder that the mundane can be maybe not exciting, but it can be something to still appreciate, to still bask in. There are many people today in different parts of the world. We know what's going on in Gaza and, around the world, but there are many people that would give their lives, they would give anything to appreciate the mundane, the everyday days that we're taking for granted and we consider to be boring and uneventful. They're praying for those days. And I, for one, I'm leaning into that appreciation. Yeah, let me know what you think about the books. If you've read some of them, if you're going to check out some of them, if you have any book recommendations, let me know. This is not a book video, it's a vlog. So let's keep vlogging. Was it? Hello. Sorry, I'm vlogging because I'm just like, hi, that's my brother.
We're called Inception FaceTime call.
Wait,